Welcome to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Our mission is to bring you discussions on a wide array of topics in the coaching world to grow players on and off the court. You can connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and also reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Now, here's your host, Coach Mike Hernandez.
Welcome back, and thank you again for joining us on whatever platform you happen to be listening on. Today's topic is one that's near and dear to me, as I am and have primarily been a girls basketball coach. We're going to have a conversation today about empowering girls athletics such as basketball and also bringing more women voices to the game itself. And to help me discuss this topic, I'm happy to be joined by both coach and athletic director at St. Vincent St. Mary High School, Carley Whitney. Coach, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. To get us started with this topic, Coach, I want to make sure that I spend some time to have you explain your journey and your basketball journey, where it's taken you, where you're at right now, and everything in between. So Coach, what's your journey been?
Yeah. My name is Carley Whitney. I am the assistant athletic director and head girls basketball coach at St. Vincent St. Mary High School in Akron, Ohio. This is my 7th year as the head coach of the varsity team. The previous 7 seasons before that, I was an assistant or a JV coach my first year, then a varsity assistant. I was a 3-sport athlete in high school. I went on to coach right after I graduated. I did not play college basketball. I started coaching right when I graduated. My journey is a little different than most, I guess you could say. I've been in this game for about 14 years, which is long, but I guess I'm still young. I'm only 31. So I guess, my love is with athletics. Obviously, my heart is with the female side. And that's kind of my journey. I am the first female athletic administrator at St. Vincent St. Mary High School. It's really, I don't know. My dream was always to be the head coach at St. Vincent St. Mary, and it was not handed to me. I earned it at 25. So I've kind of lived this in this world of athletics for a really long time. My role as assistant athletic director, I'm not just in charge. A lot of people think with my counterpart, our AD, Willie McGee, that he handles the boys' side and I handle the girls' side. That's not true.
Right.
It's a totally shared role in what we do. He's the athletic director and I'm his assistant, but we both handle both sports and both genders. So that's kind of my journey. That's kind of how I got here. And I've been the assistant AD for the last 7 years as well.
That's great. And like you said, you've kind of you jumped right into the game, right into coaching, kind of been in it for quite a long time already. But I want to make sure that we touch on you being that first female athletic director, that position that you currently have right now at St. Vincent St. Mary. As being the first female athletic director at the school, what was that transition like? Was it easy for you and the staff? Were there things that you had to change? And what advice would you give to a woman who might ascend to a previously male-dominated role like you did?
There has been women in the athletic department before me. I will say that. So those women that were in there before did also help pave the way for me. But I am the first named and labeled assistant athletic director right now. So, it is a very, very interesting world. When you work at a school like St. Vincent St. Mary, I don't know if you know our background, we are a football and basketball. In Ohio, those are your sports.
Yeah.
We're very highly competitive. We are the home of LeBron James. Yep. LeBron went to our school. Obviously, that's kind of also, he put us on the map. That's our claim to fame. So I'm not working at, just like a small rural public school. We are kind of a nationally known brand that is predominant in our area in a lot of sports, male and female. We've been very blessed to have high success. State championships are an expectation. If you go to our school, we only hang state championship banners. We're not in the league. They're hanging in the rafters at the gym. It's an expectation. There's a lot of pressure when you coach there. Our current boys basketball team has been to 13 state Final Fours in the last 20 years. And they've won 8 of them. So, they're 8 of 13.
Yeah.
And they've been to the last 5. So, it's what is expected of you. So I think that I have maybe been a little more quick of acceptance in my role because I was born and raised there. I graduated from St. B in 2007. My siblings went there. My mom worked there when she was pregnant with me. I'm kind of, I was born and bleed green and gold. So my transition was probably easier because I've been around for a really long time.
Right.
Quote unquote, being the woman in the office. Everyone knew me. So, and we, for the last 6 years, our athletic director, Willie McGee, he and the guy before him that I worked under, Andy Jalwin, the transition has pretty much been transitionless. We work well together and we do what we have to do. But I would, if I could give any advice to women that want to be in my, in the sports world or be like me or even remotely coach, you have to have thick skin and you have to be completely self-aware. You have to be completely and totally accept the fact that you're going to have a differing of opinion. People handle things different than what you do. Yeah. You have to take the emotions out of it. You have to be one of the guys with your own opinion. One thing that's great about guys is, they go onto a subject and then they move on. Women don't really do that. So, you have to have a short memory. You have to obviously love sports. Yep. You can't do this job just kind of half-assing it. You have to be full throttle, totally into it and everything that comes with it, especially at the high school level. And for me, I guess my biggest, and still to this day, one thing that I really, and it's not just being a woman, like I don't hate it, but when you label something as like female or male or the first female or the first this, I feel like that's putting unwarranted pressure or you're trying to make it seem like something it's not. I'm just an athletic director trying to help kids. I'm just a coach trying to instill life values into girls and help them be strong, independent women. So what I would say is being an administrator at a school that has the name that we do, or even anywhere, is you got to be willing to have somebody tell you no, not once, but maybe 3 or 4 times. You have to have an opinion, stand up for what's right, support your coaches, support your community. And that might mean that they all have different opinions on one issue. You're not going to make everybody happy. You have to do what you think is right and what's right for your population and who you serve, which are the kids. So you got to know every coach is going to do what they think is best for their program. And you have to do what's best for your coaches and your student population. So I think that when you're in a position like me, 75 people are going to have 75 different opinions on one thing. And you have to be able to sift through all of that and work through it. That's probably my biggest challenge, or I guess you could say being a woman might be the hardest thing to sift through at times.
Well, something that you mentioned that kind of stuck with me is about having that thick skin. And I think that it is a possibility. And again, this isn't just with girls in general. It's if anyone who feels that they might be labeled and they might be, nervous about making a decision because, they might not respect me or they may not, trust what I'm going to say, but it sounds like you've kind of built that, just that thick skin and that persistence, to, like you said, not just accepting no, one time to keep being adamant and keep advocating for what you believe in. And then, it sounds like to me, you've also built a pretty good rapport and have really been out there and your coaches really well. And it doesn't sound like there's any issue where they're expecting to talk to the other athletic director over you. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah. I think I wish, I've been a coach for 7 years and I've, sometimes working where you grew up is a blessing and a curse. Yeah. You know what I mean? You're kind of under the microscope a little bit more than a stranger would be because you're always kind of that little girl in the stands at the football games that everyone remembers, So, I guess in regards to having thick skin is, I wish somebody would have told me at the beginning of my career that, you're a liar if you're saying that you don't want to be liked. Everybody wants to be liked. That's how I feel. I even want to be liked by everybody. You don't want to make people mad or piss people off or, but at the end of the day, it's impossible. to be in a position with some power or to be the head of something and have everyone like you. If everyone likes you, you're not doing a very good job. So for me, it's when I say having thick skin is you have to be willing to put, 10 toes down, put your feet in the sand, and be willing to accept whatever comes after the decision that you make, and know that people aren't going to like you. It took me a long time, not a long time, but I was under the same head coach as an assistant for 7 years. He also coached me. So I only knew, one way or one philosophy. And I didn't necessarily agree with everything as an assistant that he said, but that was okay. You have to have people on your staff or around you that aren't always yes men. So when I took over, I completely changed not only the offense and defense, but also the culture. He was great, Joe Jakubik, who I was under for a long time. He was great to me. But it's just we're completely different people. Mm-hmm. So to me, it's having thick skin was I changed everything. And I'm under the radar now. And a lot of people, he was very successful the 10 seasons before me. We went to state, and people don't like change. Yep. So I had to develop some thick skin and accept that it was okay to be me. It was okay to do things different. It was okay that some people didn't like me and I maybe have known them for, 20 plus years since I was a kid. You have to, as you move on and you evolve and you do things, you have to understand that thick skin is a requirement. Definitely a requirement.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I feel like we both everyone sort of balances this idea of like wanting to be liked versus also at the same time doing like what you think is right. And it just sort of comes with just trusting yourself, believing in yourself. And I know a lot of young coaches and new coaches kind of struggle with that a little bit, but once you kind of find that voice, you find that identity and find something that you believe in, then it's okay if not everyone likes you. Like you said, if everyone likes you, probably doing something wrong. There's probably something that's not being done correct.
Well, I even tell all of our new coaches, I said, everything takes 3 years. The first year you kind of do what everybody tells you to do. The second year you learn from what didn't work in year 1. And then year 3, you kind of say, screw this, I'm doing it my way. Mm-hmm. And you kind of find who you are and you find what you believe in, and unapologetically, I've kind of unapologetically just have remained myself. And you kind of break out of the shell, and if you last, especially at a school like St. B, if you last after year 3, you then kind of say, screw this, I'm doing this my way. Mm-hmm. And that's just the evolution of finding yourself and being who you are and being confident or passionate, or I guess in my case, maybe too passionate, too confident. But that's just what sports are. We are in a generation where, I'm sure boys are kind of the same, but this is there's very low self-motivation with this group, and mental toughness is at sometimes questionable, because most of their relationships happen electronically. Mm-hmm. So just that's something that as time continues to move on and sports continue to evolve, that's something that will always be an issue to me.
Right. I agree that these athletes that we have, they have a unique set of circumstances and a unique set of challenges in the way they go about life. That's a little bit different than probably how you and I did. Totally. And also, I'm sure a lot of coaches who just heard what you said would love if their athletic director said, all right, you got 3 years to build it as your own. I think that's great. So as we kind of talk a little bit about like the evolution and shift and how athletics are always changing, it looks a little bit different perhaps at your school, but I'm kind of, as we think a little bit more big picture, I know girls basketball is doing well at your school and also in your area in particular. But there are some areas, I know I'm speaking for my area and some other areas around the country, where we're seeing declines in like women's participation in sports like basketball, among others. So how have you and how has your area kind of been able to build a strong girls basketball culture, and how can other coaches or areas maybe look to revive and like energize their girls basketball program, or maybe their other like girls sports in general in their area?
Unfortunately, our sport's dying. And I hate to say that kind of graphically, but it's the truth. Girls are choosing other sports. Like, I don't know with your region, but volleyball and lacrosse are killing our sport. Even softball's declining where I am right now. I think it's because, and I say this in the nicest way possible, kids are picking easier sports. They don't want to run. They don't want to work. They don't want a defensive slide. They may not want to deal with, yelling or, it's just what's happening. For me, about 2 years ago, we saw the decline in our program, and I had to make a choice. I feel like the hardest part about coaching is you have to change with the times. It's not 10 years ago when we were coming up and you had the older white guy coach that did everything one way for 25 years and was extremist. You know what I mean? It's not that time anymore. It's the world we live in. You have to concede in some areas, but not lose your process. So I guess what we've done is, I hate to say this because there's no other way to say it, we've almost made it a little bit more fun. You have to have a culture. You have to have something that girls want to be a part of something before they work hard. You know what I mean? They have to be able to feel like they're a part of something before they jump off the deep end for you. And we've kind of made our culture a little bit more fun from the JV and freshman level, and even our workouts, to the point that you're a part of something. So when it comes 6 months down the road and it gets hard, you're already a part of it. So you're willing to go the extra mile. 3 years ago, we had to give up our freshman team. We didn't have numbers, which was weird. Wow. There are public schools in our area that have 3,000 kids in the school and don't have a freshman or barely a JV team. Oh, wow. It's crazy. And for me, it's worked. I don't know. Something I've never done before is last year we didn't make cuts. Did our numbers increase? Yeah. Were there girls that came out that probably would have never? Yeah. But it's something, if you have to decide, do you want to build a program or do you want to win? But I think that there's a nice balance of both. You have to be willing, if you really are coaching high school for the right reasons, you have to be willing to accept girls. You have to be able to develop the mind, body, and spirit. You have to give girls an opportunity to do something, to be a part of something. And then at your higher level, that's where you can compete to win. You have to find a good balance, or our sport is going to continue to die. If you don't work with the volleyball coaches and the softball coaches, trust me, I would be lying to you if I said Coach Carley would love all of her girls to play basketball and basketball only. But I would be the biggest hypocrite. I played 3 sports. They should experience the high school experience, play volleyball, play soccer, play softball. I get it. Go do your thing. You have to have a working rapport with those coaches and those students for retention, especially since our sport is dying, if that makes any sense.
Well, yeah, I think the collaboration piece is really key, especially like you said, if you want to, kind of practice what you preach and want girls to be involved in a bunch of different things that kind of involves that collaboration. Absolutely. So you mentioned something that's probably going to raise some alarm bells in some coaches' minds, as you talked about how you had to make it more fun. And so some coaches might not even be able to process what that would even look like. So when you were making those changes and you're like, all right, this is going to be more fun, what did that actually like kind of look like? I know you talked a little bit about bringing the team together, but were there specific things that you're like intentionally trying to do to make it more fun?
Yeah. So I'm a firm believer I have a very diverse coaching staff. I love young alumni that come back and help. I love young coaches. I love female and male coaches, but there's something, these girls connect with younger females on a level I couldn't. When I was an assistant, they all connected with me because I was 19. You know what I mean? They loved me. Yeah. We were talking on the phone. I have always and will always continue to bring alumni around. They come to open gyms. They coach my summer league. They coach my shootouts, everything. They come to practice. My gym's always open. I've hired some young bucks that have taken over my entire summer. My assistant, Markea, she does all my training. I literally come and sit in the bleachers. I'm there, but I try to stay away, and that has helped a lot. She has a different energy about her than me. She does things different than me. They respond to her a little bit different, and they don't need to be with me all year. I had to give up some control to make things quote unquote more fun. We plan pool parties. One thing we do is I have them over my house about once a month 4 team dinners throughout the year, if not more. You know, we'll do taco, we'll do lasagna, but everybody has to bring something, and they're at my house. Or we'll do breakfast on a Saturday. We do that stuff all the time. Girls have to get to know you. Girls are more worried about what your favorite color is and who you're going to dinner with than what the hell you're running. I hate to say it. So they have to trust you. So we do a lot of that kind of stuff. I didn't make cuts last year.
Yeah.
First time in my whole high school career, I've never made cuts. We accepted everybody. We do a lot of like you have, like a buddy box, or we pair you up with different people. We do study tables. We do a lot of things together. We go unless it was COVID-19, the whole month of June, every weekend we're at a different shootout. I drive them in the van. They don't go with their parents. They go with us in a large van.
Right.
We eat together. It's just, I feel like teams are made in the off season, and girls are already such an interesting dynamic with girls that if you don't get them to buy in and to be like in the summer, you're not going to build a team in 3 weeks in your preseason. Right. You're not.
Yeah.
And these girls these days are not me. Back in the day, you can say whatever you want to them. You don't have to interact with them. You can scream and yell at them. They're a totally different type now. And it's taken me time. We have strength and conditioning Monday through Thursday. I don't go.
No.
Our strength coach, Coach Brian, said they have a better workout when you're not there. I said, okay, I'm not going anymore. Mm-hmm. And it's extremely improved and been more efficient. So I think that you have to at times give up some control. You're not handicapping your program. Like, I'm not going to not go and let things fall apart, but you have to trust the people around you, and you have to you have to give them a bone at some point. That's how I feel. Well, yeah, you have to allow those girls. Yeah, there's got to be a balance. Mm-hmm. And women don't want to disappoint you, but they want consistency. And I'll get to that on your next question. I think it's coming up. But,
yeah.
So when I say more fun, I just mean we do a lot of things together. I've relaxed on my participation in a lot of things. I've given up some of my control. We get creative. Like, my nephew is in a preschool class, and they do the All About Me thing. Mm. You make the giant poster board. Every day for the preseason, 30 days leading up to our first game, there's going to be an All About Me project. I'm going to assign you a day, and you're going to come in. I want to know where you're from, where do you go to church, where do you live, what does your neighborhood look like, what's your name, what's your parents' name? Because if you don't know what her parents' names are or what makes her tick, I'm not going to be able to catch a ball and finish a layup with 3 seconds to go in the second half.
Right.
You're not.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense, and something that you've continually emphasized, and I think it's super important. It's something I've also been trying to do it with my girls' team, is just the culture that you build off of the court, like you do by having the girls over, like you do like these different team building events. And I think that that's so important, that you're constantly in your off season, you're building that culture, building that team, and like you mentioned before, having your girls feel like they're a part of something, and I think that's super important. And I love the idea too of like bringing your alumni around. I know that we've had that just a couple of times where we've had a couple girls who came back, and they're treated like they're like rock stars or something, because they're like college age girls or something like that came back. And especially if they know what you're doing and they can help you out in any way, like absolutely use the people that you already had in your system. That'd be great.
Totally.
Quick question about you mentioned about how some of the girls, or a lot of the girls, are kind of veering towards like softball and volleyball and choosing that. Were these girls who had been doing basketball their whole life, do you think? Like ones who had been doing camps and been doing a bunch of youth participation in basketball, and then they decided when they got to high school that they were just going to do another direction? It was that sort of situation?
Yeah. I have on my team right now, I have a lot of multi-sport athletes in general, but I've just seen that there are a lot of girls that have played basketball their whole life. Maybe they played 2 or 3 sports, and then in the 8th grade, going into the summer, going into their freshman year, they decide to cut basketball and stay with volleyball. Or they come to all your stuff in the fall, they're playing volleyball, and then they don't show up for tryouts. So, it's just, I think that we're living in a time where kids are specializing. And It's what they want to do. I mean, you can't knock them for what they want to do, but I've lost some pretty good athletes. Now, would they have panned out as basketball players? I couldn't tell you, but very good athletes that then I'm also in the building, obviously. So like junior, senior, they're like, man, Coach Carley, I wish I would have played basketball. I'm like, yeah, duh. I've only asked you, like every year, you're such a great athlete, at least my whole thing is just try it. Just try it. Come to the first week, try it. If you don't like it and you don't like our culture, go back to volleyball. Just go do what you want to do.
Yeah.
But don't have a regret in 3 years. Right. I've had at least 4 or 5 girls in my last 7 years that come their senior and they're like, man, I really wish I would have played Coach Carley. I'm like, well, yeah, but it is what it is. Or I've had girls that finally came out their senior year and are like, why wasn't I doing this my whole high school career?
Oh man. Yeah. And that sounds to me like it's important then for coaches and to think of when they're building their programs is that the other students and the other players kind of know what that team's culture is. Like if your girls basketball team, for example, like has a culture and people know it's like you said, it's kind of fun and it's kind of like a family and everything like that. And people know that already, that might also be able to help you, help coaches out a little bit to have players come out when they kind of have that reputation already.
Yeah. And one thing that I think would help other coaches too, especially from the high school level, I ask each coach, soccer, volleyball for like 5 minutes at the end of a practice. And I go one time and I introduce myself and I'm always at their games because I'm working, but I'll just say, basketball tryouts are so-and-so. I'm looking forward to watching you guys play soccer. I just want you guys to know who I am. I would love to have you guys come play. Right. And just being visible, I think would help a lot. It kind of shows that you're supportive of all of everything that they do. Now that's easy for me because, I'm at the school anyway, but I think that would help some of those programs that are trying to get more bodies.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. It's something I've been working to try and do the last few years is just to be visible. It shows also, I know that you're there in a working capacity, but it does show that you care about these players more than just if they show up for basketball. Like you're going to be there for like soccer, you're going to be there for volleyball, you're going to be there for those other sports because you're not just in your own like bubble, just in your own basketball bubble and not willing to kind of see anybody else. And also It seems like you said, as you mentioned earlier, is like building that relationship with those coaches where you're on the same side and they're perfectly fine with it and they can come to at the end of your practice and talk about their sport. And, we're all just sort of working together. Absolutely. So a lot of what you've talked about was this idea of building a team and kind of building like this sisterhood and building like this culture where they're like family. And so what is the on-court benefit that you've seen when that relationship is built between the coach and the player and the players and player have that relationship? Are there things that you're able to do on the court that are a lot more effective because of that relationship and because of that culture that you've helped build?
It's night and day. I have been blessed to coach extremely talented individuals and teams. I'm not going to sit here and say that I have had a rough path athletically. We've been to 5 district finals. We've won 3, been to the regional final twice, been to state once in 7 years. I've had wonderful teams. So my idea and my expectation of basketball is already high, just because of the caliber that we coach and what's expected of these kids. So I'll start off by saying that. So it's easy for me to say. But to me, and I said it before, girls don't want to disappoint and they want consistency. That's what girls want in a relationship, in their family, and on a team. It doesn't change. So to me, I've had 2 years ago, we went to state, and I've said this, we were talented, but it's not the most talented team I've ever had. The most talented team I've ever had was my second year coaching, and we lost at the buzzer at the district final. Girls shot a 3, it went in. And I had all 5 of my starters were all committed and signed to Division I colleges. We were ranked in the state. It was nuts.
Wow.
But I lost that game because I couldn't control my locker room and I couldn't get those girls to believe and a common goal. The hardest part about coaching females is getting 20 girls to agree on one thing. They can't even agree on where to go for lunch, so you have to constantly have conversations, hard conversations, call people out, have circles, have kumbayas. 60% of my job is personality management and 40% is coaching. It really is. So if you can get girls to agree on one thing and buy in, they'll do anything for you. Girls, they will run through a brick wall at a specific time for you if that's what you say to them. But it's that, that lead up to that's hard. So to me, 2 years ago when we went to state, we were down, and I say this and I've said this, I don't know how many times, so I'm blue in the face. In the regional final, we were down 6 with 4 minutes to go in the third quarter. And I called a timeout and I told them what they were going to do, and they were prepared, and they went out there and they got 4 steals in a row for 8 straight points.
Wow.
And they did that because they all trusted each other and me.
Mm-hmm.
There's some great teams around my area that have great players, but haven't panned out to their potential because of the trust factor. And not only each other, but the coach. And when you can have that, like, to me, like, winning a state championship is talent, luck, and trust.
I like that. Yeah.
And at our school, at St. Vincent St. Mary, our boys program, it's at the top. It's elite. And there's something that happens. I tell Coach Drew Joyce all the time, there's something that happens to you guys around game 17 of 22. You see it. It's visible. It's tangible. He has the innate ability to get all 20 boys to believe in one goal, and they go and do it. And it doesn't matter if they're 7-10 or 17-0 or 8-9. It doesn't matter. And I think that's sometimes what coaches, I'm not the greatest coach in the world. I'm not perfect. One thing that I know, though, is girls. And if you don't remember why you're coaching and why you're there and who you're serving and how can I get this group up the next notch, oh my God, if you're coaching for your own win and loss record, you need therapy. If you're coaching girls. But I just feel like, for us, building that culture, regardless of what happens at the end of the year and where we end in the playoffs, that moves your program forward. Mm-hmm. That's why alumni come back. That's why my gym is full of college kids during the winter season. And right now, they want to be a part of something, and it's a forever thing for me. A sisterhood, it's a forever thing, So we have rules and we have platforms and we have, just as simple as this, and I'll give this idea to anybody because I stole it from a college. We have an Irish Forever wall in our locker room, and there's a leprechaun. It says Irish Forever. And at the end of each season, we do exit interviews. So, we go, I meet with them, probably 4 times throughout the year, quarterly, but the end, like probably 2 weeks after our season ends, I call them in for 10-minute meetings. They're called exit interviews with the coaching staff. We go over everything. And the senior class, they go and they sign their Irish Forever wall. And we've done that for the last 4 years. And when alumni come back, they go and sign it. And my goal is to have that banner completely filled.
Yeah.
So when you walk in those doors as a freshman, you look at that wall and you think, wow, that's pretty cool. That's going to be me one day.
Yeah.
So just an idea, just trying to keep a culture and keep things engaged. It's very important in a private school, right. And maybe a little easier in a private school. And I am totally ignorant to what public schools do. So I couldn't tell you about that, but that has been the alumni factor for my program has been a staple and has been one of the biggest blessings that I've encountered as a coach.
Right.
And I would encourage every coach that's listening or that isn't listening, that is something that you have to do.
Yeah.
You don't have to do it, but it is so worth it.
Right. And it seems like it helps the girls buy into something, and they kind of see, like, oh, like you said, like this wall, like this is, I'll be there at some point. There's something that they can kind of be a part of. And it's like another example of something that they get to be a part of that's kind of greater than themselves. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You've mentioned a couple of times about consistency and how important that is and being consistent. And I know that that's super important in terms of making sure that you're following through on like the expectations and making sure that whatever, rules or standards you've set, you're consistent in following through with those. I want to talk just real quick about inconsistency. Are there things that you've either experienced or seen where coaches might be like inconsistent and they might not think it's too big of a deal, but it could end up having like a really bad effect?
Totally. I see it every day. And as a coach, it's really easy to get absorbed in what's going on, be so busy, not want to deal with something, not another problem. Oh my God. But if you're not consistent with girls, it's a domino effect. And they internalize everything. So, it's 5 suicides if you forget your practice jersey. I don't care if you forgot it in your car. At 3:31, when we're in the circle and you don't have it on, it's 5 for you and 1 for the entire team. And years ago, I didn't make the team run. And you can kind of see, like, if coach doesn't hold up her end of the bargain, it's almost like they're not a strike against you, but they kind of take a step back, like, what?
Yeah.
And then they can start doing what they want. You know what I mean? It's like the inmates running the asylum. Or they can start talking to you any way that you want. You know what I mean? If you take a step back from your rules, whatever they are, girls see that and notice that, oh, well, I had to run last week, but she didn't have to. Oh, she likes her more than me.
Uh-oh.
So, that's how girls are petty and they're catty and they internalize everything. Nothing is black and white with them. It's all gray. It's all gray. But if you can make it as black and white as possible out of your mouth and follow through with what comes out of your mouth, then have no rules. If you're going to bend them, have no rules.
Right.
Or don't put anything on paper. That's just, I have noticed that when I've taken a step back or when I've kind of said, I don't really care about that, things start to fall apart. They do what you do.
Right.
They act how you act.
Yeah.
So if you're not going to make them run or you're going to do this, they're going to start pointing the finger. And I've learned that through my career. And sometimes it's not intentional. You got a lot going on. Me, I'm at 7 different places at one time. It's human nature. But you have, like, we have a speaker, his name's Billy Taylor. He comes in every year and talks to my kids. And he always says that you never lower your standard. In baseball, the mound is always 90 feet and a home run, you always hit all 4 bases.
Yep.
A single's 1 base. If you start making home runs only to third, that's against the rules. Don't lower your standard. If you move that mound in 80, to 80 feet, it's an unfair, so
yeah.
It's consistency to me. I couldn't tell you if it works for boys too. It is the most important thing that we do.
Well, it seems so simple, but it makes a lot of sense. Once you start letting things like go, then you really have no rules or you really have no standards anymore at that point. And kind of going back to about building a really good culture is that hopefully coaches can build that culture where if they are inconsistent, because we all are as coaches, we do maybe once in a while or sometimes make mistakes where a player can call you out on it, but you're not going to get defensive. Like I've been called out a couple of times where I've been inconsistent and I just go, yeah, you're right. And that's on me. And if you're genuine about it and you follow through and fix it, I've found that a lot of my players are pretty forgiving, but if you are just defiant or if you're just, getting agitated at them or like you said, like why even have any expectations if you're not going to follow through on them or you're not going to have people like hold you accountable to
and they notice and repeat everything. They're like parrots. When you tell your team something, you better follow through, especially with girls. They don't forget anything ever. It could have been a year ago.
Yeah.
They don't forget. So if you're going to say it, you better do it. And, I'm sitting here talking about my culture and my team. There's been better years than others. There's been better years where kids buy in than others. It doesn't happen perfectly every year. Some years it's like pulling teeth, but I do it every year.
Yeah.
And you have to hope that it's going to work out. You can't give up. You can't.
Right.
Or go be a store manager at the Acme. Like you have to, if this is really what you want to do, you have to, it's a marriage, it's work.
Well, it ties back into having a thick skin, like we talked about earlier, having that thick skin
Right.
and being determined, right? Well, so this one is going to speak directly to me because I am a male who coaches girls basketball, and so what do you think are some things? I know we talked about a few already, but what are some things that you think men should be aware of when it comes to being an effective girls coach? Are there blind spots or oversights that men may have when coaching girls, especially maybe if they're transitioning from having coached boys previously and now coaching girls?
I think male coaches are great. I'm not a feminist in the fact that like I think it should be female only. I don't. I was coached by all men.
Yep.
I never had a female coach in my whole life. And I'm a little bit unemotional. I'm high energy. I'm passionate. I'll yell at you. I'll get all up in your grill. You know, I'm not a person that just sits back. I'm not that person. Yep. But I think that when I'm around both games, male and female, around boys and girls, and I have paid attention and looked around, to me, girls, it's not the yelling. It is when you coach boys, you can yell and scream and rant and rave. And they continue to do what they're going to do. With girls, they need yelled at, then they need direction. They need to know, why am I getting yelled at and what can I do to improve? Because I don't want to disappoint you. So to me, it's yell, and then somebody else needs to explain to them how to improve, where to go, and why are you getting yelled at. I've seen a lot of male coaches that just scream and rant and rave, and then you continue to see production go down. Or even some male coaches that have coached with me, you know, we've received feedback at the end of the year that like, I want you to yell at me, but sometimes I don't know why I'm getting yelled at. So I don't know if that's a male or a female problem. I just think that a lot of men coach girls like they coach boys because they're a male.
Right.
And this day and age, when I was playing back in the early 2000s, you could call me any name. I didn't care. You know, right now I have maybe 2 girls on my entire team that I could say a cuss word to. Mm-hmm. So I think that sometimes male coaches think, well, I'm going to coach this way, and if they can't handle it, get out of there. But the reality is they're still young women, ladies. They're still ladies. And they don't want to disappoint. So when they're looking at you, it's like you're their dad, and they don't want to disappoint you. And they need yelled at, but they still need hugged. You know, they still want to know that it's okay and I love you, but here's what we have to do.
Yeah, and it sounds like that male coach can't be that stereotypical kind of like bulldozer. It's just, my way or the highway, and it's just gonna end up screaming and doing all of that without
and it can be women
any flexibility.
too.
Yeah,
it can
absolutely.
be women too. That's been a criticism of mine. That sometimes you yell and I don't know why you're yelling at me. Or I'll never forget 3 years ago, one of she plays college basketball now. She one time pulled me aside and said, Coach, I'm not saying that you can't yell at me, but sometimes you yell and I really don't know. I can't get past the yelling. I'm not hearing you. Can you please pull me aside and tell me what you need from me, then yell at me? And I was like, wow. And she was a junior. So for 2 years, I was coaching her completely wrong. Then when I started doing that, it was like a shot out of a cannon.
Wow.
And at that time in my life, I'm like, what am I doing? Like you have to unfortunately coach all these girls differently. You do at times. So I think just being self-aware, reading your audience, girls will tell you with their face, and their productivity if it's not working.
Right. No, it makes a lot of sense. I had a girl like that who I coached who would basically said the same thing. Said, Coach, the second you yell, like, I don't hear anything else. Like, I just know you're yelling. And it's like, oh, well, you have to build that relationship. Like you said, read the audience, kind of understand like who you're talking to. And like you said, you can't just say things the same way to every single person. You have to know who you're talking to and know how to effectively communicate with them. So absolutely, that makes a lot of sense. And then on the other side of that coin, in your experience with coaching and being an athletic director, have you seen, I'm talking about basketball, but also maybe a little bit more in general, has there been an increase or a decrease in women that you've seen getting into coaching? What's kind of been your experience with the landscape of women coaches at your school and in your area?
In my area, I've seen a increase in women head coaches, but I will say I don't want to say last long. I think that real life takes over. I think at some point you get married, you have kids, you coach your own kids. Mm-hmm. The longevity of a female head coach or coach in general, your life takes over. You're not, sorry guys, but as a mom, there are only certain things that us females can do. So I've had one of my assistants was with me for 4 years, loved her, but she called me and was like, Carley, with my job and my daughter's getting older, I want to coach her team. I got to step down. I was devastated, but that's her family, Yeah. So you see, for me being a head coach, I've seen an increase in female head coaches, mm-hmm. but I've noticed that they either bounce around at other schools, or, they're there 4 or 5 years, which is a long time. And then, mm-hmm. they step away, they have a family. I have seen in the AAU world a lot of young women around teams.
Okay.
I've seen a lot of females as assistants. How much they do, I don't know.
Right.
But I would say I've seen an increase. And I have not seen an increase in African Americans. I'll say that. I've not. I think that it is important to have diversity in gender and race on your staff. Mm-hmm. I think that kids on your team need to look at somebody that looks like them. I think that that's important.
Right.
I'm Caucasian. I won't be able to relate to my entire student population. That's why Markea and Carrie were there.
Right.
Yeah. So have I seen an increase in women? Yes. I mean, if you listen to Muffet McGraw, mm-hmm. Last year on her, I would say, quote unquote, rant about females in coaching and athletics. I think that it's not where it needs to be. In my area, I've seen a slight increase. Yes. However, I would encourage people to get involved. Those post-college athletes to go back to your high school or to your local high school or wherever and volunteer or get a paid coaching job. Coaching isn't for everybody, and you can only hire who applies. And I think that we're in an area of the world right now where people don't really want to coach.
And is there something you attribute that to? Is there a certain thing that you think has kind of led to people not wanting to coach as much anymore?
Oh, I think pressure, pressure, parents. It's a lot of things that aren't related to coaching, and that's in every sport. Mm-hmm. Issues. People don't like controversy. Like I said, 60% of my job is personality management.
Yeah.
40% is coaching. When I was an assistant, I just coached.
Yeah.
I didn't have to deal with the meetings and the, everything else. So, I think the hardest part about athletics in college is that eventually you are not an athlete anymore. And the best way to get the best of both worlds is to get involved in youth sports. And I encourage my girls, my college players, that's why they come back. Mm-hmm. And, I actually just got a text about a week ago from a past player that says, Coach, in 21-22, can I volunteer coach for you? It'll only be for a year. I said, hell yeah. Come on back. So it's, and it's being willing as a head coach to take on a younger generation and know they don't know everything.
Yeah.
So you have to be willing to nurture and guide, and it's not easy to build a coaching staff, and 40% of your coaching staff is under the age of 22.
Yeah.
But that's not what people want.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what a lot of people want. But for me, I think it's important.
Well, it makes a lot of sense. You're doing that empowerment, and you're also kind of feeding into that next group of people who are hopefully loving coaching and getting into coaching. And one of the things I mentioned to a few of the seniors that I had last year is about, like you mentioned about if you want to give back to youth sports, like you're knowledgeable, like my seniors, they're knowledgeable about basketball. They know how to give back if they're passionate about it, to feel confident that they have experience and they have things that they can give back even at the youth level. And so that seems to be a consistent message about just that empowerment and just letting them know, like, you are skilled at this, like you are good at basketball and you can give back. And if you want to work with kids, perfect. You can do basketball and work with kids too.
Like the greatest award I ever receive is just seeing my alumni.
Yeah.
Just seeing them playing overseas or playing in college or being academic, all whatever, coming back, talking to the kids, just seeing them become, you know, members of society, a spouse, a mom, whatever. I mean, that is your greatest accomplishment.
Yeah, that's your legacy. That's kind of, that's a big part of your legacy. Absolutely. I agree. So let's, to conclude, I always love this. I feel like I get so much great insight about this, Coach. What's a moment in your coaching career of yours that you think others can learn from?
Oh, wow. Oh, geez, that others can learn from. That's a deep question.
That's what I aim for.
I would say, you know, I have spent a majority of now I will say this, the place that I coach at, I love. I bleed the colors green and gold. Behind closed doors, it hasn't been. You might look at my Instagram and my Twitter are not what my real life. Okay, so it's not. But I would say, a lot of people tell you what you can't do. I've spent my entire head coaching career, still to this day, and all people do and all I hear is what people tell me what I can't do. Or what I shouldn't be doing. And if you would look at my story, don't listen to the can'ts or that she's to this or you're to that or you should be doing this or that. Continue to do what you think you should. Because my first 2 years of coaching, I was ranked in the state. I was a 25-year-old. I had top 50 athletes, and we didn't make it past the third game of the playoffs, and we were picked to win it all. And the vultures came out and they wanted me fired. And when I tell you, I was born there.
Yeah.
So I've been around this place for 25 years. And the lesson basically that I learned is sometimes the loudest people are the people closest to you. And you just have to continue to push forward.
Right.
And good things happen to good people. Don't let the storm clouds around you rain on you. I think that coaching is your duty. To me, it's a duty. It's a mission. It's a path. I don't necessarily have to be doing this. There's a lot of other things that you could be doing in life that are more fun. You know, I tell my girls all the time, I could be getting paid a way lot more and doing a hell of a lot more, traveling the world and, you know, but I would just say, if there's anything that you can learn from my story is you got to manifest some stuff. You got to own it. And don't let people that constantly tell you can't do something tell you that. If I listened to them, I would have quit 5 years ago, and I'm on year 7. Yeah. And even when you're at the top, at state Final Four, or at the bottom and lose in your first round playoff game, like I have multiple times, they still hate you.
Well,
I don't know if that answers your question.
No, there's always going to be people who are detractors. There's going to be people who are making a lot of noise, and as we mentioned time and time again about having that thick skin, having that belief in yourself, and understanding that in your heart that you are doing the right thing, I think is kind of what that comes down to.
Yeah, and I would say too is, you know, whatever your team population is, however many kids that is, whether it's 5 or 25, you know, that's who you do it for. Like this whole quarantine, I had to kind of soul search and find out who I was without basketball, you know?
Yeah.
And it was hard for me, honestly. I've been doing this for so long. And it was kind of like, to me, who do we serve? So who do I serve? It's those 25 girls, and nothing else around that matters.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I think that as a coaching population, we get so caught up in everything else around that. Above you, floating above you, around you, talking at you, not to you, rankings, social media, buzz, all this stuff that you sometimes forget about what's directly in front of you, and they're all looking back at you.
Yeah.
So my challenge for the next duration of my coaching career, which I've done, but I have to do a better job of, is making that entire circle the most important part of my day and my time.
Yeah. That's great. That, there's so much noise. There's so much distraction, social media, and all these other things that are going around that sometimes we lose sight of what's right in front of you. And as you said, like, the girls are going to be looking right back at you. They're going to be, responding to you and what you're doing. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We've kind of veered into that closing segment, but I wanted to give you the time anyway to give what I call kind of like my 60-second soapbox. And I know you've given a lot of great insights and a lot of great ideas here in just that last question. But I wanted to give you just the floor again for another minute or so. If there's any final piece of advice, final thought, something you didn't get to, just some sort of closing message that you want to make sure that coaches hear.
Yeah, I would just continue to encourage, our I call you guys my peers, to just be great. I think that it's very easy to get caught up in the storm clouds or to forget why you're doing what you're doing. It's important to always remember your why. And for me, it's, the 25 sets of eyes looking back at me. Do what you think is right all the time. What's best for the program every single time. And be willing to ask somebody, even if that requires 1 no or 2 no's or 3 no's, continue to pound the pavement and make our sport better. One thing that I've kind of noticed about female sports in general is that, not at my school, but I feel like at times we're not very open and don't share a whole lot with not even our opponents, but our colleagues. I feel like there's kind of these walls up. And for me, the greatest part about St. Vincent St. Mary is I've been blessed to have coaches that are legends share with me. So don't be afraid to ask for help. You're not by yourself. You're only as good as the people around you. Don't be afraid to build an elite coaching staff with people that know more than you. And just continue to be great. Like if you're not willing to be great, your kids aren't. So to me, I guess I commend you. I get it. You're not in the boat alone. And if I can ever help anybody, again, I don't have it all figured out. I don't. I never will. I don't claim to. I'm not perfect. I screw up every day. I make the wrong calls. But I think just always remember that girls, 2 things. They don't want to disappoint you, and they need you to be consistent.
Well, that's a great way. Yeah,
they'll do anything for you after that.
Right. Yeah, they'll run through the wall for you. And I love that you mentioned about asking questions is a strength, and knowing that you need to ask questions, because if you're asking those questions, if you're working with those other coaches, if you're looking for advice, ultimately what you're doing is you're taking all of that and it's just going to help your team. It's going to help your girls. And if that's what you're here for, then you should be wanting to ask those questions.
Yeah, and just to kind of, and I'm going to say this and I'll be done talking. Is that at the beginning of my career, I thought that it was me against everyone. I really did. I really thought that, with exception of some people that I trusted, that I was out in this boat alone. No one was going through anything that I was going through. It's hard. It's long. Basketball's the longest season. And then, I joined like the WBCA. If you're a women's basketball coach and have not joined the WBCA, you have to. Women's Basketball Coaches Association. It's for anybody who coaches women's basketball at any level, AAU, high school, middle school, college, WNBA. The amount of resources they give you, the coaches clinics, are top notch. It's $75 a year. You will get $1,075 out of it. If I would just recommend, you don't have to give up the nation's secrets and your team's secrets, but you have to it's so nice and rewarding to know that people go through the same things you do. They've experienced the same things you have. And when people are willing to share, it helps you. So that's something that I wish somebody would have told me years ago. But that has been, it's helped me personally, professionally, finding a balance and knowing that I'm not out here by myself.
Well, that's such a good thought for people to keep in mind, that no one should feel like they're going through any of this alone, and that there's resources you can reach out to. It's not you against everybody. Like in a perfect world, and hopefully we're kind of building to that, where we're more collaborative, we're more focused on helping each other, because again, ultimately, hopefully we're trying to build these young men and women, and so we should feel hopefully that we're in an environment that we're working together in order to do so, and you're not alone when you do this. Well, I want to thank you again, Coach Whitney, for spending some time to discuss the importance of girls athletics and so much more than just that. This was a great discussion. I hope we can all continue to just grow the game just in general, not just on the girls' side, but in general. And I think there's a lot of really good ideas that we can take from this discussion. So thank you again, and good luck this season, Coach.
Hey, thanks. I appreciate it.
Thank you. This was another episode of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next time.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Make sure to connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, or reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Take care, be safe, and we'll see you next time.